Hello there. Thanks for joining us on another of our special interviews. I am Vin Martin Obiora Ilo from Abuja, Nigeria, welcoming you to this session with someone who has become that voice, who keeps taking us back to what it should be. That voice that talks truth to power. That voice that gives hope to the ordinary Nigerian. And that voice that is always remembering and reminding us that God still loves us. And with hope in Him, all things will be possible. My pleasure to welcome someone we popularly know as Father Kukah, that is also Bishop Matthew Kukah. He's the founder of the Kukah Center and the convener of the National Peace Committee, among so many other caps that he is wearing. Bishop Kukah, my pleasure to welcome you to this special interview.
Pleasure to have you, Vin, and congratulations on your new television station. And I know God will do great things through you.
Thank you, Your Lordship. A lot of people, when this program started, will be wondering whether Bishop Kukah has a twin brother, because you're dressed so differently today. Is there something particular that made you dress the way you have dressed today? When you walked in, I was looking and waiting for your castle.
Well, let me tell you a nice anecdote which will answer your question. It's about this young 5-year-old boy who befriended his parish priest. He was always hanging around Father after Mass. So one day he says to his parish priest, come to our house. Mommy will cook for you. Unfortunately, he hadn't, cleared the matter with his mother. So he gets home and tells the mother that Father is coming. And the mother said, coming for what? He said, Father is coming to eat in our house. He said, how? He said, I invited him. So the woman runs into the kitchen and starts cooking. And then, but he has always seen Father in his cassock in the church. Then on this particular evening, Father now dresses up, wears a kaftan, and then arrives at the house. Immediately, he knocks at the door. The little boy ran and opened the door. Then he sees Father in a kaftan. He doesn't welcome Father. He runs back to his mother and says, Mommy, come and see. Father has become a man. So I'm wearing this to let you know that I've become. Well, today is Saturday, and I think at least it's a good way to create a distraction.
It's like the masquerade, and suddenly
becomes a human being.
Bishop Kukah, really a pleasure as always to have you in a conversation. And I've been very intrigued by what may have informed your decision to convene the National Peace Committee. And it's been a couple of years now since that committee has been in place, and the array of very important and consequential Nigerians that you brought into that committee has also helped the work of that committee. I mean, do you feel fulfilled? Do you feel like the mission, the objective, the vision you had when you came up with that body, that substantially you're fulfilled about it?
Well, no, I mean, none of us can be fulfilled until we breathe our last breath. People may be bored now listening to me say this, but this country, beginning with the Catholic Church, has been extraordinarily good to me. And that is why I am where I am. And because of the amount of resources that the church has invested in me and the space that my country has given me and the experience and the exposure that I've had, I can only be eternally grateful to God. But guess what? It's an aggregate of all of these things that has imbued in me a sense of optimism that I have. One, about what the church can do. Two, about what this country can do and what it can be. So to answer your question by a long road is to say I have served in about, I think, 4 key presidential initiatives through President Obasanjo, President Yaradua, President Jonathan, all the way through to President Buhari. In the Catholic Church, I have served, even before I became a bishop, through 3 or 4 different popes. Pope John Paul II, Pope Benedict, who appointed me as a member of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue as a consultant. I was still Secretary General then.
Of the Nigerian Bishops' Conference?
No. At the level of the Vatican.
At the Vatican.
And I had the rare honor of serving over a 10-year period. And then Pope Benedict appointed me a bishop. And he also reappointed me to serve as a member of the Committee on Integral Human Development, which I was revalidated by Pope Francis. So I've had more than a fair share of the graciousness of both the church and the Nigerian state. And I think it's a combination of all of these things that have shaped my thinking about what the Catholic Church can do, what the state can do. So the National Peace Committee I would not want to say it was an auspicious decision. I remembered Senator Benobi, who was President Jonathan's
political advisor?
Political advisor, but he also chaired an office called an Office for Intergovernmental Relations, which was a very strategic position. It was he who organized the conference here. I don't remember the date, but I think it was 1st or 2nd, early January. And I was invited to that conference. Unfortunately, I came to Abuja, but I already had a Kukah Center event, so I couldn't be at the event. And then at about 7 or 8 p.m., I get a call from Chief Emeka Anyoku, man I had the greatest respect and reverence for. So he calls me and he says, "Look, Bishop, where are you?" I thought he was going to scold me because he chaired that event and he knew I was coming. So he said, "We didn't see you at the conference." And I said, "I'm so sorry, sir. I really couldn't. I was not able to make it." So he says to me, "Where are you?" I was actually physically here at the Kukah Center. So I said, "I'm in Abuja." He said, "Okay. Do you know Kofi Annan?" I said, "Of course, I know Kofi Annan. I know of Kofi Annan, but I've never met him." And he said, "Okay, he's here. He would like to meet you." I said, "Me?" He said, "Yes." "Kofi Annan?" He said, "Yes." He said, "He's actually getting ready to catch a flight, but he's ready to wait for you." So I got into the car. I couldn't believe it. I rushed to the Hilton, and there they were. We shook hands, we embraced with Kofi Annan, and he said to me, he said, "Look, I've heard a lot about you. I've read about you. There needs to be a National Peace Committee in Nigeria." But this was against the backdrop of what had happened in Kenya in 2014 at the elections, which over 1,000 people had died. It was unprecedented. Politics hadn't gone so wrong in Kenya. And he says, "Look, we don't want what happened in Kenya to happen in Nigeria." And if you remember, there had been a projection way back in 2013, by Nigerians saying that the Americans had predicted that Nigeria would collapse in 2015. Unfortunately, 99% of the Nigerians who talked about, who believed and who absorbed this prophecy hadn't read the text. Luckily for me, I was here to speak at the birthday of my friend of blessed memory, Ojoma Duekwe. And immediately I finished the lecture, I get a call from the National Security Advisor, General Gusau, who says, "Look, where are you?" I said, "I'm in Abuja." He said, "I just heard that you delivered a very incisive lecture. I said, oh, okay. He said, can you come to my office? I said, I don't know your office. He said, okay. Anyway, so I get to his office and he says to me, look, here, read and give me your comments. So I looked at it. It was the
so-called prediction.
From the so-called prediction. I read it and I think I sent him about a page or 2.5 pages of my comments. So I don't know. So I'm sorry I'm going on too long.
No, it's fine
to place this in context. So I knew what that document contained. And it was a document where I had a sense of, I think I knew actually those who wrote the document, largely because of my familiarity with some members of the intellectual elite in Washington who were always talking and thinking about Nigeria. So it's not the fault of Washington that it will make projection about what countries of interest are like Nigeria. So, but Nigerians took this. So Kofi Annan then said to me, look, there's this anxiety about Nigeria and the fact that it may not survive the 2015 election. So can you please help us? He said, because I've asked around, your name keeps coming up as a man that we should talk to. And I think he said something like, somebody who everybody will answer your call. So can you please help us set up a National Peace Committee? And that's how it all started. So we shook hands and that was it. And then I sat down and started thinking. We got to where we got to.
Was the United Nations supposed to fund it?
No. Funding issues didn't arise. Not United. Beautiful question, but it also tells you that money doesn't do much. It's ideas. Money can chase ideas. So the interesting thing is that we did literally everything we needed to do without spending money. The only thing I can say is I spent money making telephone calls, but beyond that, nothing. So I was able to call all of these people, beginning with Jan Abdul Salam, the Sultan, Cardinal Onaikan, Obitu Kiwe, Mrs. Ukeje. I mean, I was deliberate in my choice and assemblance because I paid attention to both gender and also regional spread. So we had a pretty decent team of Nigerians with credibility and so on. So, when we had the first meeting, I was pretty clear in my mind about who should lead it. And I felt that Abdul Salam had the right pedigree. He was the one who facilitated our process and so on. And so we literally took off from there.
So when you look back after these years, that was actually the crux of my question. Do you think that substantially you have achieved
absolutely
those things you set out to achieve?
I think we've gone even beyond the goalposts we set for ourselves.
Oh, really?
Yes, because first, when we had our first meeting, the question, the recommendation, this came out of a recommendation that was made during that conference, in which Senator Benobi had brought Emeka Anyoko to chair and then Kofi Annan. So the issue was, after we've gotten all these people, what next? So we all sat down together. The first meeting, and when I spoke to General Abdul Salam, he was a little bit polite. He said, no, let's have an election about who will be chairman. I said, no, sir, no, there's no election. You will be the chairman. So when we got started, the short communique of that meeting said that there was need to set up a National Peace Committee for the 2015 election. So it was issue specific. The Peace
election
specific was for the elections, for the 2015 election. So 2015 elections, our mission was to make sure that violence did not break out. Two, we were to also try and ensure that the process was concluded peacefully. And that was why we thought about engaging INEC, the security agencies, and the political actors. Now, the dynamics, the whole process of what happened 24 hours before the election is a story for another day.
You might summarize it for me?
It's difficult for me to summarize it because we had this incredible challenge. On the day we wanted to have a meeting with all the political actors, especially because at that point, General Buhari was not ready to talk to President Jonathan. And we had gone to the villa and we had met with President Jonathan President General Buhari did not attend that meeting because it happened to be on Asiwaju Bola Tinubu's birthday. And since he was the driving force behind APC, General Buhari couldn't be here. He went to Lagos. So I pleaded, I said, even if you come back from Lagos, can we still talk? So when we left President Jonathan, we more or less concluded that, well, there's nothing we could do because we needed a meeting of the two of them to agree on. And then, because this meeting didn't, because President Buhari was not, General Buhari was not around, I then got a text from, I think it was Dr. Oyegun, who was chairman of the
APC.
I kept in touch with him. And I said, look, so I had a triangle of communication. I was keeping in touch with General Abdul Salam, keeping in touch with Oyegun, monitoring their return from Lagos. 8 o'clock p.m., 9 o'clock p.m., 10 o'clock p.m. We couldn't conclude anything. And then finally, General Abdul Salam sends me a text and says, listen, if I don't hear from you by this hour, don't call me again. Which is very unlike him. But of course, I understood his emotion because he had invested so much. So by 11, thereabout, nothing. And one great thing with General Abdul Salam is that he's a man of extraordinary humility. You have something to do with General Abdul Salam, he just never tires of making sure that he's constantly in touch with everybody. So we literally bid goodbye. And we didn't know what we were going to do because we had already decided that there will be need to sign the two people to meet because the mood was quite tense. So I went to bed, but I don't know how many times I woke up that night. And then at about 5:30 a.m., yes, I decided to first of all do what I ought to do. That is to go to the chapel, celebrate Mass, and then come back. So I came back, turned on my phone, and saw that Abdul Salam had sent me a text to say that, I'm trying to remember now, that he had heard from Buhari's people, and that we should meet at at Sheraton. Buhari was ready. Now, we hadn't made a reservation
at the Sheraton.
But the guests of some of our members were staying there. And President Jonathan's people had told me that the elections were going to be on Saturday. And this was Thursday, I think. And we needed to close this because President General Buhari was going to leave for Dawara the next day. So I now try to reach General Buhari. Finally, I got with him. And he said, I got your message. I will be there at 8 o'clock in the morning. Was it 9 o'clock? I think maybe 8 or 9. So I'm all excited. Then President Jonathan's people had told us that President Jonathan is going to leave for, I think it was Delta at 11 o'clock. Was it 10? I think 10 o'clock. So meanwhile, we have not drafted the text
to be signed.
So I have about 30 or 40 minutes within which to draft a document. We couldn't get President Jonathan to come and sign a document he hadn't read. We couldn't get President General Buhari to sign a document they hadn't read. So in between, we managed to pass the document for General Buhari to look at. My challenge now was to get President Jonathan. So I called Dr. Ruben Abati. This was now, luckily for me, when we went to see President Jonathan, there's a young man, one of the security aides, who came to me. And he said to me, oh, Bishop, I like you. I've been doing the things you're doing. So we chatted. And then he said, people say I look like you. So we just
exchange numbers.
Then we exchanged numbers. So I now called him because I tried to reach everybody I could. We're not talking about something to 7 of them. I said, can you help me trace the president? He said, Bishop, it's too early. I said, just go around and check his budget. Then at about 7:30 or thereabout, the bishop, he said the president is having breakfast. I said, can you please hit the telephone to him and say it's from me? The President Jonathan answered the phone and I said, sir, we have heard from President Buhari's people, and can you please help us adjust the program to Delta? Because I know you are.
Was he supposed to be at the Sheraton?
Yes, because I'm now trying to get him to slow down on Delta, because I said, Delta president you are the president, you can arrive Delta anytime, even if you wanted to arrive but we need to do this. Because if we didn't do it, if he went to Delta, Buhari would have gone to Daura. So President Jonathan now agreed that, okay, he will adjust his program. So I now called Dr. Ruben Abati. I said, where are you? He said, I'm in the villa. I said, listen, I'm going to send something to you. Do you have your iPad or whatever with you? He said, yes, I have my iPad. So I'm going to send something to you now. It's a text of it. Please, the president is having breakfast. Can you go and read out the text of this while he's having his breakfast? And Ruben agreed. And Ruben took the risk, read, and then came back to me to say the president is happy with it. Now it's already going to 8 o'clock. So I make a quick dash. I'm already at the Sheraton. And then at about 10 minutes to 8, we're all very nervous. So I stepped out to see what is happening. Who did I see? At the stroke of 8, there was President Buhari coming out of. So he saw me. He said, Bishop, how are you? I said, sir, I'm not happy. He said, what do you mean you're not happy? I said, I have problem. This is the problem with military people. So what, do you have problem with soldiers? I said, sir, why do you keep so strictly to time? Because I said, I was just praying that you will be late. Then he said, but you asked me to come at 8. I said, yes, I asked you to come at 8, sir. But I
wish you didn't come at 8.
So, we laugh. So, meanwhile, General Abdul Salam and I'm walking, now where the hell am I going to put General Buhari pending? So, we hadn't booked for it. So, I now went to I saw the cleaner. I said, listen, can you open the holding room? We had no reservation, but because they knew it was Bishop Kukah, whatever I asked for them, so they went and cleaned up the place. So that we took President Buhari there. Long story short, at about 9 o'clock or so, the Jonathan appears. The rest is history. That was the signing of the first peace accord. But the good thing is that when we finished, the next challenge was we were for the 2015 election. 2015 elections came and went seamlessly, hopefully, and everything went. President Jonathan took that spectacular decision, so we didn't have any crisis of. So when we finished, General Abdul Salam says to me, okay, now our job is done. I said, sir, yes, it's done, but we cannot all go home. He said, so what do you mean? He said, I think we should all convene and review. Have a little bit of debriefing. So he said, at least you will thank everybody. So then I made a suggestion to him. I said, look, sir, I think that maybe this thing, from the things I'm hearing from people and the things I'm reading in the media, I think Nigerians really appreciated the work we did. But since, as the saying goes, the eye cannot see itself except through the mirror, why don't we ask different segments of the Nigerian society their feeling about what we did and so on? They said, that's fine. So I then got my phone. I called Shegun Adeni. So we set up a meeting with the media to just ask how did we do, and then what lessons can we learn. I called a meeting of the members of the APC and the PDP. I called fixed up an appointment for us to see the Senate President, Bukola Saraki that time, and then Dogara, who was the Speaker. Then we set up an appointment to see the President Buhari, President Jonathan, and then President Buhari. And we had those meetings. Guess what? Everybody from the media right through to They said, this is a fantastic, you guys cannot go anywhere. This peace committee must remain. The last person we met was the president himself. Buhari says, forget about you. No. The peace committee must remain. Then he points to, I don't know, was it Babachir? He points to his secretary to government. He said, find them an office immediately. That was how much accolade, so to say. So when we then went back to the Hilton, to the Sheraton to say goodbye to everybody, one of the things I said to the chairman, I said, please, you heard what the president is saying about us getting an office. Let's not take an office from government, but it will kill this process. And he says, what do you mean? I said, you know better than myself, but from my own little experience, if government gives us an office, two things will happen. We'll be on our way to the mortuary because the president's handlers will want to now say they want their own people in the peace committee. I know why I brought everybody to this committee. It cannot be diluted by politics. But if we take office from government, you can be sure that will happen. Two, if we take an office from government, we must maintain a critical distance. So we cannot take an office from government because we're not looking for money. Everybody who has met here, the only thing that the peace committee always tried to do was to just take tickets and so on. So luckily for us, so we now had a conversation. We don't have an address. So what are we going to do? Most of the work was being done by the Kukah Center. So I think it was either Cardinal Onaikan or Archbishop or the Sultan who said, look, so why don't we just, since you initiated, why don't we just have a space at the Kukah Center? And that's how we became incubators of the National Peace Committee. And as I said, we are now over how many years now? 2015 to 2025, 10 years? We've gone through
and still kicking.
And still kicking.
So what's the lesson to learn from when people come together, talk about their differences, and even start to remediate a situation that could happen?
Look, when I was growing up as a kid, there was something in I came out of a very small village, but there was something that always happened, which was that if you wanted to get married, you didn't just go find a girl. Even if you did, the process was such that there was always a third person. So the girl will leave her father's house on the eve of the wedding or so, or even a week before the wedding, and she will stay in the house of an uncle or whoever who becomes
like a go-between.
Before she deliver to you. And when the marriage finally takes place and she has a problem, she can't jump the queue and go straight to her family. She'll go through this person who will negotiate, and hopefully the journey to her parents will not arise. So you can finish everything and she comes back. Now, for me, it was a striking methodology for managing conflict. Because two combatants cannot resolve their problem. If they were able to resolve their problem, they will not be fighting in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So I see the peace committee as also a vindication of the need for an alternative to politics. Politics is too acrimonious, is too combative, is too, there's so much conflict and clash of greedy people with personal interests and so on. So the peace committee has tried to serve as a mediator. I don't think it has, because it doesn't have a statutory role to play, so to say. But it is to some great extent like the grandmother, just constantly appealing. That's the only voice we have. But I think the good news is that this voice has become so respected. And here, we now begin to deal with the financials. And this is where the European Union comes in as perhaps our most strategic partner. Beginning with the conversation I had with the Swiss ambassador. In fact, the Swiss ambassador was here last night. We started with the Swiss embassy, but they also had vast experience in negotiating. I know that at the level of the National Security Advisor's Office, they know what the Swiss are doing, but they're doing exceptionally good work. So they started by inviting me to their embassy. We had a conversation. That was even before this whole thing started. It turned out that they themselves had actually been contemplating the possibility of having a national peace committee, in which actually my name surfaced after we finished the conversation. That was before Emeka and Yoko
came into it.
So when this happened, they simply just said, look, we've been working on this, and now that it is here, let's go. So they started, and then the European Union has been our principal supporter and funder. So they're paying our rents, they're paying our bills, and our bills are quite minimal, largely because it's just about paying for tickets and things of that nature. But they have also been a source of great encouragement to us. But they've also freed the peace committee, from the exigencies of politics and the perceptions that people always have. Because, as you know, we don't manage transitions successfully. This group would have come and said, no, we don't. You work with these people, therefore we want a new team to work with. But their support has also made it possible for the peace committee to remain sufficiently neutral, as an arbiter.
And another interesting thing is that the peace committee didn't just stay at the federal level. It has gone to the subnational, to the states.
But this is an unintended consequence. Nigerians, with my little experience, especially at the Kukah panel, Nigerians are always looking for a dustbin. So whenever anything comes up, they believe that this is the lamb that will take away all our sins. So we now have so much pressure of people. We are supposed little quarrel in Isukwato local government, the One Peace Committee to little quarrel in Darazo local government. They have in Canada.
Maybe you need to establish the peace committee in local government.
No. But it's good because. But what I'm saying is that people always believe that one platform can resolve all their conflicts. The peace committee, and these are problems we are also dealing with. Are we just going to be dealing with issues concerning presidential elections? What about gubernatorial elections? We can't do all the electoral processes, but we have now become active in off-cycle elections because people have a bit of free energy. So we'll be in Anambra, for example, for November. We were in Edo, we'll be in Ondo, and all those places where the elections are off-cycle. So they've given us an opportunity also to be on the ground. Secondly, because of the great demand, so to say, for arbitration and what people see the peace committee is doing, I take those calls from different parts of my settle as a positive thing. So that at least people know that you are there and they think there is something that you can do. The second point is that we have now made a bit of progress because the Kukah Center really very. One thing I'm very proud of these young people. First of all, I've never interviewed anybody for a job at the Kukah Center. But it's as if the director, Father Barkindo, as if they've read my mind, and I think they know where we are going. So two critical things have happened here. Average age of the staff here is about 29, 30. So it's a young establishment. And then what is even more consoling to me is that 60% or maybe 70% of the workforce here is women. So on that level, I feel a sense of vindication that we are also providing platform for young people and their energy, their competence, their capacity. They are also learning the exigencies of politics.
And that could be a basis for sustainability.
Well, absolutely. So, for example, we have a very fantastic project which the European Union is also funding of our engaging with the politics, with the political elite. So we are involved, for example, with APC, PDP, Labour Party, even the ADC that has just come up, as the staff have gone to have a meeting with them. So we're trying to help political parties refine, the skills and then improve the level of legitimacy, because there is a crisis of how people perceive political parties to be and what they should be doing. So for me, right now, the peace committee is working in 6 states in Nigeria. Yes, and I think we're in Anambra, we're in Sokoto, we're in Zamfara, we're in Katsina, and other places where we're trying to step down some of the values and the skills that people require. I remember, I think we've done some work in Lagos State, for example. And the very good thing about Lagos State was that actually, I hear they asked the Kukah Center to do a program for the local government chairman and so on. So we're doing 2 things, not necessarily just the staff of the National Peace Committee, but the peace committee is also using the architecture and the staff of the Kukah Center, because this is what our interest is, to help to shape, to help to redefine and refine public policy. So in a way, the process is mutually beneficial. Beneficial to both sides.
Sometimes I wonder how you cope. You know, today you're in Ghana, another day you're in another. I mean, most of the places I've met you at airports within and outside Nigeria, you're always on the move. But it looks like you don't let a lot of things just pass. I mean, you're like one person that if you don't really address an issue or you don't talk about a problem, you don't feel like you've done your job. You've been one of those that I could say they brought out that 3 or 4 letter word, speaking truth to power.
It's not I don't like that expression because if you speak, it has become popular. People say to me, "Oh, you're an activist, you speak truth to power."
But you do.
I don't know about that because power is not stationary. You know, I'm trying to encourage people to take responsibility.
Okay.
And popular as that concept is of speaking truth to power, it's a sense in which it's like you're barking at the moon. No matter how sweet your voice is, the moon doesn't. So for me,
are you saying that people in power don't listen?
I'm getting there. Skills that because if you see the great work that people did in civil society, the whole lot, Femi Falana, Abdul Oro, where are they today? The mistake that we made in 1999, I'm a priest, so I'd never left my sanctuary. I did the things I needed to do, but I also know where my boundaries are. I'm not a political actor. I tell people I'm political, but I'm not a politician. And that arises from my consciousness of having read history, having read politics, having read political science, having read theology. So with all sense of modesty, I can say I understand the issues. And it's what drives my passion. So when you say I don't let things pass, I'm also not unaware of the fact that it is possible to be a guilty bystander. That's our problem. You know, so you can
sitting on the fence.
Sitting on the fence, you know, and that's why you remember the famous saying that John Kennedy appropriated, that some people say things as they are, and they ask why. I see things as they are. I dream things as they ought to be, and I ask why not. So it's my ambition has always been to see how because without education, I will not be a fraction of where I am today. I do appreciate, and honestly, it is so difficult for me to communicate this to people. The amount of demand that people make. I can tell, in a month, I don't receive less than 5 or so invitations to speak here, to write a foreword, to write a book, to deliver a lecture, and so on and so forth. But I also think that God has compensated me by giving me what I call a small body, but also a fairly healthy body. So, and my commitment and obligation to God is that, let it be on record that the gifts you gave to me, whether it's health or whether it's a bit of education and other people around me, that gift, and the final day I can stand before you and say, I did my best. So if you see a sense of urgency in what I'm doing, it's because if you are a Catholic priest, I'm sorry, I've made this point. If you're a Catholic priest, you have an idea, and we can't pretend about it. 7 years of intense training about what God's ultimate plans for humanity and the human beings He's created are. We know that the church has conceptualized this. It's in its theology about drawing from what Jesus said. The reason why Jesus came to the world is not to perform miracles. I've come so that you may have life and have it to the full.
Abundant.
So it doesn't matter where you are and what your station. Of course, like the Americans said in 1776, that the ultimate reason why they are setting up a model of governance is that people can pursue happiness, liberty, and freedom. I see how people are constrained, how people's potentials are circumscribed. So when we sit down here, we talk about 25 million Almajiris across northern Nigeria. I'm not a spectator. On the 30th of last month, I brought President Obasanjo to Sokoto. The Sultan was there. We commissioned a hall with 250 laptops, an ICT center. It's my own little contribution to the people of Sokoto. And so if you can say it's my own, instead of just talking about figures and data. Okay, the Bureau of Statistics has just indicated that Sokoto State has 90% multidimensional poverty. That means 9 out of 10 people who are living in the state. Whether it's true or not, that's what the data is saying. I cannot be a spectator by saying, what am I going to do? People say to me, but even this money, you could have taken it to your village. There's nothing in my village, almost literally nothing. But I could have made that investment in my village, or made it in Kaduna State, or made it elsewhere. But right now, as a bishop of the Catholic Church, if I die today, I will not be buried in my village. I will not be buried in Kaduna, which is my diocese. I'll be buried in Sokoto. So I made Sokoto my home. It's the only way I can compensate the people. Let me put it that way. So, and I see, because I can see the grinding poverty, but I can also see the instrumentalization of religion, which is leading to all the violence we are facing in Nigeria. So for me as a Catholic priest, I say, I have yes, religious affiliation, yes, ethnic affiliation, yes. But it's not in our DNA to do anything wrong rather than seeing the face of God in all his children. And I often say to people provocatively, we are not a church because we are Catholic. Okay, sorry, we are not a church because we are Catholic. We are Catholics because we are a church. Okay, that is because the word Catholic simply means universal. So, and if we claim to be a church or a religion and we're only feeding off ourselves or looking after ourselves, which is the problem with religion today. That's why religion has lost its potency. Because religion is now become just glorified tribalism. So if you're only looking after yourself, then you are not living according to the principles of Christ. So for me, it's a combination of all these factors that make me look restless. But I think ultimately, I can only say I thank God. Because sometimes I go to speak. If I were speaking for money, 10 million naira would not make me leave Sokoto. 20 million naira would not be enough. It would not make me leave. And if I were to place some kind of worth on the things I do.
On the things you do.
But most people will tell you, I've never told anybody, I'm going to speak, how much are you going to pay me? So people give me money. They are generous to me. But the moral ground I stand on is that nobody, whether you're president, governor, will not say that Bishop Kukah ever walked up to you and said, "Okay, I want to change my car, or I want to change my shoe." So my restlessness is the only way I can reward God for what he has done, because on the final day, he's going to ask me the questions, and these questions are not going to be what I see all of the 10 commandments. It will just be, as Matthew, I says in Matthew, 25, 35, 31, verses 31 to the end. I was hungry, he gave me to eat. I was thirsty, he gave me to drink. I was sick and in prison, he visited me. Am I doing all of this? Maybe not, but I'm not insensitive to those. And I think whether politics or economic, private sector, public sector, what is killing us is a lack of the human sensitivity about the worth of an individual. That what you want, no matter your station, whether you are president, whether you are governor, what you want for your child is what your driver wants for his child. So if we don't create an environment in which people can flourish based on their capacity and their competence. Not everybody wants to drive a Rolls Royce. Not everybody who wants to live in a 10-story, in a 10 bedroom house. But there is something to be said about dignity, integrity, and how people raise their families and so on. And this is why the Catholic Church continues to offer a model that it talks about. It's all encoded in the teachings of the Catholic Church, which is that we try to explain to people whether they are in politics or whatever. Europe is now talking about a post-Christian society. But you can see a correlation between that and the abandonment of the principles of Christianity that that Europe used when, after 1945, after the end of the Second World War, the Christian Democrats, as political parties right across Europe, framed their teachings, framed their politics and their manifestos on largely the principles of the social teachings of the church. So you can see a correlation between the moral breakdown of society in Europe and even for us here, because what we're witnessing even in northern Nigeria is a breakdown of the moral authority of religion. Otherwise, how do you explain the fact that, that's what I was saying yesterday in my lecture. Maybe the Sultan didn't quite understand what I was saying when he said to me, we're talking about jihad. I'm not talking about jihad as seeking people to improve yourself. Yeah, that's not where we are at. We're talking about people who are entering, who are slaughtering other Muslims and saying Allahu Akbar. We're talking about people, incidents in which in Sokoto and elsewhere, where the same, because they're saying Allahu Akbar, I'm a Christian and I'm proud of the fact that no Christian has ever raised a stick against anybody and said, in the name of Jesus, I'm breaking your head. Now, women are being raped in the mosque. People are being slaughtered in the mosque. And so when I warn against Islamism and the contamination of religion, it is that all of us need to face, see what Egypt is happening. I mean, see what is happening in Egypt now. I'm told that most of my friends, I mean, significant number of the northern elite, that's what I hear, are buying houses. People are no longer buying houses in Dubai, they're buying houses in Egypt, because Egypt is building 6 different cities simultaneously. But that's because they cut off the head of that Islamic group that wanted to use Islam as a basis
to destroy Egypt.
That is what Algeria did in 1993. So when we have this ambivalent relationship with people, do you agree with Boko Haram? We don't know. And I said it during Buhari's administration. The only thing, because if Buhari went out of his way to make sure that all the security chiefs in Nigeria were all Muslims. You are president, you are a Muslim. The Senate president is a Muslim. The speaker is a Muslim. And then the deputy speaker is a Muslim. We didn't lose a war by being Christian. And this is a situation where the same Muslims will be the first. They started shouting about Wike being a minister because this is our home. How dare you bring in a Christian as minister of the FCT? So you know, and I've always said to my friends in the north, let me tell you, I'm convinced that you might actually be better off. Northern Nigeria will be better off under a president who is not necessarily a Muslim and from northern Nigeria. Because look at the records from Tafawa Balewa till date. Look at the records. Who has governed Nigeria the more? And what do we have to show for it? But you see, because of the kind of emotions people have, that's why the Tinubu and Shetima ticket has now become a serious embarrassment. Because those fanatical extremists who were celebrating that now we have 2 Muslims, they took off from Buhari's nonsense. Okay, now we have decided that my friend, I don't know whether to call him my friend, but our former governor, El Rufai, boasted that he took away the deputy gubernatorial position from Southern Kaduna and gave it to a Muslim, I mean from Christians, and gave it to a Muslim. Okay? We have never had an appointment of a Christian from Southern Kaduna since the time of Jonathan. Now, when Tinubu comes and he's a Muslim, and he appoints General Christopher Musa and makes him a chief of defense, I know the resistance. It's just out of the stubbornness of President Tinubu as the president of Nigeria. We have a university now in Southern Kaduna. I can tell you I'm not a bystander in the processes leading to the affirmation of that university becoming a federal university. The vice president, Kashim Shettima, was our main warrior. Am I going to sit here and be talking about, because I have seen that my future is not imperiled
because Muslims
by
are
the fact that Muslims are in power. The North did not improve because Muslims were in power. I don't want to take your time, but I can tell you it's a very simple story. One day somebody called me from Mina. We exchanged pleasantries. He said to me, please, Bishop, hold the line. There's an old man who wants to talk to you. I said, who is he? He said, no, just hold the line. He handed the phone over to me. I won't tell you the full story, but the guy, I think it's a Muslim. He definitely is a Muslim. He said to me, is it Bishop Kukah? I said, yes. He spoke to me in house. Is it Bishop Kukah? I said, yes. Bishop Kukah, yes. Real Bishop Kukah? I said, yes. Then I've been looking.
I didn't know there was a fake.
I didn't know what to say. Because, many people call me and they're wondering, are they really talking to me?
Yes.
So this old man says to me, he said, today I will sleep peacefully. Because there's nobody in this country that I hated as much as you. Then I used to literally every time you're on radio, television, listen to you. I loved you, but that love descended to hatred. And I've been looking around. It's almost one day asking, is there anybody who knows you and who can find your number? They told me about this man. That's why I begged him to call you on my behalf. He said the first thing is after God, the only other person that I adored was Buhari. So when I heard you challenging Buhari, I said, who the hell are you to challenge what I consider to be God on earth? And then not only once, not only twice, not only did you say, who? So every time I saw you on television, I tell them to switch off my phone. I don't want to. He said, now Buhari has finished and gone. I want to ask you a question. What did you see that the rest of us couldn't see?
While Buhari was president.
While Buhari was president. I said, I didn't see anything, sir. He said, can you forgive me? I said, issue of forgiveness does not arise because you didn't tell me, you never said anything. Well, this is the first time I'm speaking to you. But if you want forgiveness, yes, I forgive you. He said, I'll sleep in peace. Thank you. Now, the point I'm making is that, so when you talk about speaking truth to power, we also have to develop other channels. So I don't just speak truth to power. I have to develop the other diplomatic channels that can enable me, okay, because I have as much obligation to President Tinubu as I have to the people of Nigeria, to President Buhari, as I have to I will tell them. But I also know that merely speaking will not bring water to any community. Okay, merely speaking and saying we have no road will not bring water because television is a moving whatever. If you missed it, you missed it. So you as a leader have to also have the other channels by which you can communicate other things.
Bishop, I was coming to this. There you are, saying it the way it is, not minding whose axe is God. But I don't see people talking about assassinating Bishop Kukah because of what he says. I don't see people or leaders say, that's my enemy. How do you walk around it? That you say all this to Buhari, and then Buhari still invites you to sit down and talk. You say this about Tinubu, you say this about this person. How do you do it? Because the younger generation, that was what you were trying to explain to me, that besides saying it the way it is, there must be other channels to make sure that what you're saying is not just word of mouth, that some kind of, positivity has to come from it. How do you balance it? How do you describe that art?
There are certain things that God does that if you try to use the human lenses to explain, you lose the text. And I've tried not to, because people ask me, how did you, and I can't answer that question. Because luckily for me, I learned very early in life, especially as a priest, never to try and suck up to those in authority so I can exchange favor. I used to, when people said to me, I was just a young priest in my early 6 months ordained, when I was elected by the priests in Kaduna, who were literally all white men, to chair what is called the consultants meeting, which is the advisory meeting in which the bishop sits. But you, in our own case, became the chairman. I wasn't up to a year as a priest. And then I overheard some white person saying, Father Kukah, whatever he tells. From that moment, I literally distanced myself from my bishop.
You were saying that whatever you told the bishop,
whatever I told the bishop would be. And as a result, I never sat in my bishop's sitting room just one-on-one. I went when there was an issue. Then in my life, I just decided that I will leave the steering in God's hands. So there are certain decisions that were taken about me that I would have had a contrary opinion. And I remember when I finished from the Kennedy School, my bishop visited Washington. So I went to see, we spent the night in the parish together. And I told him all the plans I had. By then, the idea of the Kukah Center was in my head, but wasn't very clear. So I told him, I said, look, I've loved the United Nations, but there is something missing in the United Nations. There is no moral content to some of the work they are doing. In any case, this is Africa, where everything people talk about, they can't finish without mentioning God. And my experience in the Oputa panel suggested to me that the United Nations needs to take cognizance of the role religion can play. So I called up my friend, Professor Gambari, and we spoke about it, and Gambari was more than happy to. So I now told my bishop that, look, I would like to spend 1 year when I finish from the Kennedy School. My bishop said, no problem. So we concluded this. When I finished from the Kennedy School, I called my archbishop. I said, look, we have graduated. I'm ready. I want to take a holiday. And I would like to rest before I start. My archbishop said, no, come back home. I'm like, what about our conversation? He said, no, I've changed my mind. Come back home. So I then called up Professor Gambari. And I said, look, Archbishop.
Okay, you had wanted to spend a year at the United Nations?
Yes. We hadn't concluded the arrangements yet, but because I wanted to understand how the United Nations, especially in the area of their peacekeeping. So I called up Professor Gambari to say, look, my Archbishop has changed his mind. Gambari shouted, say, the problems of Nigeria will still be there when you go back. This is an opportunity. We cannot miss it. We'll have to work out. Give me the bishop's number. And I knew my Archbishop very well, that if I gave Professor Gambari his number and he called him, the Archbishop would say, stay. I knew that. So I cooked up a story. This is the first time I'm saying it publicly. I told Professor Gambari, and I hope he's not listening. I told Professor Gambari, sir, I've had a discussion with my bishop. My bishop said that I should come for 1 year and then I can come back because there is something he wants me to do. So Professor Gambari said, you are sure? I said, yes. He'll be back in 1 year. That's how we ended. I carried my bags, came back to Nigeria.
Signature TV, news in your pocket.